Hi, it's real time, Tiro.
Oh my God.
I'm
Oh,
transported back just seeing you. Oh my God.
it has been a very, very long time.
Yeah.
It's
And
been,
you're timeless.
oh,
You're timeless. Your energy, your face, I mean, all aspects of you. It's crazy. I feel like I'm right back where I was.
you're going to make me cry right at the beginning of
I
the
know. I
podcast.
should have used waterproof mascara. It's 10 a.m. on Saturday.
You're so beautiful. I'm so
Oh,
happy
it's
you're
for
here.
you. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Change for the Better, the Power of Arts in Education, episode 46.
Change for the better, and the music made me stronger. Now I'm changed for the better. You were there for me. Community. No, I've changed.
So amazing. It's so amazing. I just love doing this so much. In doing this podcast, I couldn't possibly admit to favoritism. But I will say that there are some people who have stuck in my memory, and the thought of them just instantly makes me smile very wide. My guest today is one of those people, way back from the class of 2003. Back in the early aughts, when I was very early on in my career, I remember this bright eyed young woman whose birthday is July 4th, who loved discovering new talents in the performing arts. Now, she was a gifted clarinetist who played in two of our jazz musical classics, Crazy for You and Guys and Dolls. But since she took so much enjoyment learning modern and jazz dance in class during the school day, she decided to pursue her latent passion for performing on stage. In her senior year, she finally, and I'm pretty sure that I kept bugging her to get on stage, but she finally auditioned for Anything Goes, another jazz classic by Cole Porter. She was cast in the ensemble with Hilary Becker from episode 11 and Tina Vasquez from episode 42. And I actually have this running particular sense memory of her standing at the front of the stage, dancing her heart out in rehearsal with a look of both determination and glee in the background. And that seems to be the running theme of my memories of her: determination and glee. She was also one of those brilliant, eloquent kids, one of those high achievers who we all knew would move on to great success. She was going to be okay. And of course, we weren't wrong. After graduation, she attended Cornell University, majoring in industrial and labor relations with a concentration in law and society. And while she graduated early, she spent that last semester on campus working, since she knew she was going to start her next steps at Brooklyn Law School that next September. Following law school, she started her law career as a management side labor and employment lawyer at Proskauer Rose, a global law firm and leader in the field. And after a few years developing her skills, she moved in-house to VNS, which is Visiting Nurse Services Health, where she has spent the last 8 years and now holds the title of Vice President, Associate General Counsel. She married her college sweetheart, which I love, and they have a beautiful brood of three that keeps her on her toes as a working mom. So I'm really excited to bring this person to you because this is one of those people that just kind of stays in the back of my mind. And even though I haven't seen her in 20 years, just she's always just there, kind of floating around. So we're going to bring this now to you. First question, please tell us, what is your name, the year you graduated, and tell me a little bit more about what your life is like now.
am blown away already. Should have worn waterproof mascara, but I'm so incredibly honored not only to be floating, hopefully still dancing with that facial expression on in the back of your head, but I'm so incredibly honored to be amongst the others that you've spoken with over the last 46 or 45 episodes. It's incredible. But in any event, I'm Nausheen Rokerya. I proudly graduated from Spring Valley in 2003. It's really hard to believe it's 20 years ago when I still feel like I'm 25 in my head. But I had some of the most valuable experiences of my life at Spring Valley. And I wish that more people understood the tremendous value that our teachers, yourself included, have brought to so many students over the years, because I just don't think they get enough credit. So I'm already getting sidetracked and emotional. But yes, that's my name. That's my year of graduation. And it's so nice to be reconnecting with the warm, fuzzy parts of my experiences there.
Tell me a little bit more about, your life, your career, where you are now with that, a working mom.
Yeah, in all its glory. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for, like I said, so many of my teachers really cultivated a number of different interests. And I've pursued one line, but I am, I think, a very balanced adult. And I attribute that to the fact that I've been able to keep so many of those other interests and passions alive in some form. So you laid out kind of how I got to where I am professionally today, and when you read it in a couple of lines, and it sums up so nicely, and it would be misleading for me not to say that it was it was a journey, and it wasn't always linear, and it wasn't always uphill or downhill, but I'm very, very grateful for the mentors that I've had along the way. I do think that it's only getting harder to do well. I say that now as a mom, and I realize that there are challenges that my kids are likely going to face if they're not already facing that I didn't. So I consider myself very lucky in that regard. But I'm very grateful that I've ended up in a place where I feel that I am fulfilled on a professional level, on a personal level. If someone, would have told me 20 years ago that the best is yet to come, I don't know if I would have believed them. I don't know that it would have mattered to my adolescent self, but I do feel like I'm in part of my prime, or at my peak in terms of having so many of my areas of life settled. And I'm very grateful for that.
I think when you're talking about your, the adult stuff, I entered my 50s, and I feel like there's more to learn, there's more to do, there's more to explore. And I'm getting to that place in my life now where this space is starting to open up to be able to do that. When you're working and you have young children, your life gets very focused in. And as they grow up and you grow up into your more adult self, you start to go, okay, what else is there? Where did I not explore yet? And that's kind of a very exciting and interesting and scary place to be.
Mhm.
There aren't really answers when you're a parent. You have to figure it out as you go, and same thing in your career. But when things open up so much, you go, oh, where's the structure?
Where's the structure, right?
Nope.
Where's the syllabus?
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
Oh, there is none. You have to write it yourself.
yeah, which is like you said, it's exciting and scary, but I'm glad to hear you say that, because I would love for someone to suggest to me that still the best is yet to come, at least in some way.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that next era of my life, although I'm in no rush to get there, because I really do love this phase that I'm in. And you can probably hear one of the littles in the background, but there is so much unconditional love, and I'm just going to soak that up for as long as I can.
Snuggle as long as you
Mhm.
can. I've got a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I have to sometimes
Mind blowing.
I
Because I definitely remember when you were pregnant with your first.
That's right.
Amazing.
Right. She's now a junior in college.
It's incredible.
She just came home actually, and for a long weekend. And I'm like, come here.
I feel like I know them because all of the energy, I mean, they've followed, in some of your footsteps and done some amazing things. And I feel like a little bit of a creeper, but I do feel like I know them just from having read about them and seeing their photos over the years. And
Yeah, it's really nice to share all that stuff. Of course, I have to be careful with what I put out there because, they're teenagers and one's still a teenager, one's not, but they get very touchy about that. And
yeah,
then whenever I go out into public, and if I'm with them, I invariably, run into somebody who's like, Tina, and they're like,
celebrity status.
sort of local.
Yeah.
You had mentioned about your adolescent self. So I want you to try to go back. I want you to use your adult brain to describe your adolescent self.
I was normal. I was beautifully normal. Nothing that anybody said to me at the time would have convinced me of that. But now, having seen, some things and having an adolescent of my own, everything that I thought was abnormal was totally normal. And like I said, it wouldn't have made a difference. It's like one of those things like childbirth. It's uncomfortable and painful and difficult, and all of those attributes make it very normal. But the fact that it's normal doesn't make it any less uncomfortable and painful and difficult. It's just kind of one of those things that, you can tell somebody all you want, like, oh, what you're going through is you're not alone. Everybody goes through some semblance of this. It doesn't matter, but I can definitely recognize that now. And I try to keep that in mind when, my adolescent is testing me in some way or throwing me, something that I don't remember having to deal with. Like, it's a normal phase and it has its ups and downs, but I definitely felt anything but normal at the time. And I try to remember that because there are plenty of times where I still feel, where I question whether what I'm going through or how I'm reacting to something or, what I'm feeling is normal. It's not to say that everything is normal. I'm sure there's pieces of me that are quirky but for the most part, the human experience is varied, and I've accepted that.
Yeah. I think that to a degree, you had said that adolescents today have gone through a very, very different experience than what you went through, than what I went through. And that's true. The whole cell phones and
Yeah.
social media, internet, like that was a whole layer that we really never had to deal with.
Mhm.
Seeing the adolescence from your time and the adolescence now, there's a difference. And even, my kids, because they kind of grew up in the beginning of that internet explosion, basically, where it's like right here in front of you and how drawn in they are to it. I've definitely seen a difference in how I have to interact with them. I definitely have to be even more of an entertainer, so to speak, to get and to keep their attention. I have to move really rapid fire now because that's how they see things. And so I think teachers today, if they don't adapt to what the kids' brains are used to processing, we're going to lose them. It's tough.
Yeah, it's interesting because you think about it and like at a macro level, it all kind of happened over the course of 20 years, maybe even less.
Mhm.
And so it's not a whole lot of time, right? It's basically one generation.
Yeah.
And but the impact is lasting. And the bar, like you said, for teachers, for parents, for anybody who's looking to effectively communicate with an entire generation and future generations, like the bar has shifted. It's not all negative. I mean, there's certainly positives to it, but you think about everything you're seeing now with AI, and I feel like that's the next smartphone. Right now it's like, whoa, this is new, this is crazy, this is a little scary, but maybe in 10, 15 years, maybe even less, it's going to be one of those things that we look back and think, well, how did we ever function without this? And we're so much more efficient now. And why would I ever do it the other way? So I'm just kind of bracing myself and trying to keep that perspective of computers were not a thing.
Yeah, and it's all a matter of how we use it. Like what
Right.
we make of it, and for good or for bad,
Mhm.
what are the boundaries that are out there? It's a little scary. I read that article. I think it was the New York Times reporter who had the conversation with the AI.
GPT, yeah. Yeah.
Was a little scary.
Wild.
All right, we're gonna. I could probably talk to you for like 4 hours, and
Yes.
it'll be fine.
We should do that.
Going back to your time in the studio, and actually at the time it wasn't the studio, it was probably the gym and the theater. Yeah, because we didn't have the dance studio at the time. So when you were either in class or in rehearsals, What was something that happened there in that experience that helped you to manage or to regulate your adolescent self?
So this is a bit of a wild answer because it doesn't directly relate to, the performing arts or what we were doing, but I couldn't possibly answer the question honestly without it. It was in your class.
Mm.
And if I remember correctly, you may have been on crutches at the time, but it was in your class where I was when the first plane flew into the towers on September 11th. And I just, talk about flashbulb memories. I remember someone, I don't even remember who it was, walking across the gym floor and whispering something in your ear.
That was Mary, the security guard. I remember that.
Mhm.
I'll talk
And
about it more, but go
none
ahead.
of us were paying any attention, right? You don't remember anything until you remember thinking, I should be paying attention to this situation. And what I remember being that trigger of, I need to start paying attention is the look on your face and the gasp. And, immediately we were then ushered to the locker rooms and we stayed there, until further notice. And I think someone had snuck in like a radio of some sort, and we were trying to get bits and pieces of information, spottily. And I truly, until we got out of that locker room and got more information, didn't really know what was going on, but I knew enough to know it was going to change everyone's lives. It's a horrible, I mean, there's no positive spin on the experience or the memory whatsoever, but I am so grateful. If I was going to be with any one adult in that building, I could not have picked anyone else. And I remember writing you a letter or a note of some sort. A couple of days later, it was just some sort of cathartic exercise. And at the time, I was like, oh, this is very mature of me, and which it was probably your idea. But like, I just remember writing down my thoughts in a note to you. And so whether you like it or not, you're stuck in my head, as part of the memory of that, horrible day. But there was no other place that I would have preferred to be in terms of what I needed, which was a little bit of stability, a little bit of calm. Um, I consider myself grateful in that regard. There's a lot of gratitude. So, and I do think there was a bond that I think I formed with you, and I'm sure everybody else in that, gym at the time formed with you. Like in that moment, we were together, and nobody can change that ever. And we experienced, that initial shock even without full understanding together. And I think we've carried that forth and through our lives, in different ways. And so it's not the kind of memory that I'm sure you were expecting to hear about, or I was expecting to bring up, but it's a moment. It's the moment. Now there were plenty of other
Sure.
moments.
I want to talk about that moment because that moment is also seared in my memory forever. I didn't remember specifically that you were in the class, but I am so happy that you just brought that up because yesterday, as I was, I was looking through some stuff and I was actually looking for that letter because I kept it. I know I have it here somewhere. I just have too many papers that have accumulated. I was like, oh, it's got to be in this folder. Oh, I'm going to find it at some point when I'm cleaning something out. And I remember I had pulled it out several years ago as I was looking at stuff and I read it through and I don't remember if you gave it to me in the library or where. I feel like I was in the library at some point when I read it and how deeply it affected me and how deeply it touched me because you were, and I don't know if you were one of few of the Muslim kids in the school, but I remember because there was such an anti-Muslim sentiment that came out of it,
Mhm.
how afraid you were and how sad you were about everything, being an American, having your birthday on July 4th. Like that was all just seared in my head. And I kept going, this child, like all I want to do is hug this child because of how much more deeply this extra layer of concern that this kid has. And I just want to save her from that.
Well, and I think in a lot of ways you did because you acknowledged it. And, there's not a whole lot that any of us can do. And, arguably there are some things we can collectively do as a society, and, we each do what we can on that front. But, short of that, in that moment, I think what I just needed was somebody to acknowledge that, that extra layer was present for me, and that was enough for me. And I have, continued to grapple with various layers of so many things. And at this point, so many of us have, right? We experience good things and bad things with so many different layers of consciousness, and they've evolved, right? Like part of me is like, man, I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but I wonder if any of it would embarrass me now, and if it was like an appropriate way to process something. And then the adult part of me is like, shut up, like there's no appropriate way to process something like that. If you've got an algorithm for that, that's a whole other problem. But like, and then, add to the fact that I was also, like you said, a child. I do think even now as an adult, being able to recognize that humans process things differently. And at times it's just really important to make sure folks are feeling acknowledged, heard, and given a little bit of space to work through whatever it is that means to them. And I'm great. Again, it goes back to my gratitude is what I've carried through all of these years, because I'm sure, I know that there were plenty of kids, including the ones who were not lucky, so to speak, enough to have been, like, this is what I'm saying, who had to have been with you, and I'm sure every other teacher tried to offer empathy, but for whatever reason, I just feel like I was meant to be with you and in your class in that moment.
Yeah. And recalling that moment in the gym. So I was on crutches two days before, one day before. I had broken my foot and I was on crutches. So I was literally walking into the school building for the first time. It was like the second day of school, first day of school, something like that, on crutches. And, I sat down and I had all the kids, we were in the gym at the time. And I was talking to you guys and sort of introducing myself and saying, oh, look at the crutches, but we're going to make it happen. And I
Mhm.
remember Mary walking in and she whispered in my ear something like 2 planes collided and hit the World Trade Center. And I went, what? Like, I thought it was like boom, and they just happened to be in, like, I couldn't process
Mhm.
actually happened in that moment. And I was like, oh, okay, everything is stopping now. Okay, I understand. And then, yeah, we had to go into the locker room and sit there. And I want to say it was Jen who had the transistor radio or something. And my first teacher instinct was like, no, put that away. And then I was like, no, shut up. Let this happen. Let this happen. Because and my husband was working
And
downtown.
I think I knew that. And I just remember thinking, whatever this is going to change everything for everyone. And so many of our parents and our family members commuted to New York every day in and day out. And I do think in that sense we were an extension of the city in terms of how we, processed it. And I remember climbing a hill in my backyard, and being able to see, smoke clouds, which was terrifying.
Yeah, that day just literally changed everything in so many ways. It's funny because I don't think I've shared that moment on the podcast, and I'm really grateful that you brought it up, because it was just as an important time and moment in my life, as it was for you and for everybody who was there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I need you to know, right? Like, I mean, of course you were processing it from your own standpoint, but you also need to know that you maybe even not unwillingly, but unintentionally, inadvertently provided that support for everyone who happened to be in that room that day with you. And that doesn't always happen organically. Like sometimes it does, but it doesn't always. And that I think in retrospect, I recognize that you could have reacted in a number of different ways, and you didn't.
Thank you. Okay. It was a very emotional moment for me. I don't usually get like this on the podcast, but it's okay.
It is okay.
So let's go to the class, the rehearsals, the performances, all of that.
Yeah.
What were some of the lessons that you learned there that you think about or use today?
I never thought I would be on the stage. I remember sitting in the pit in awe, and I love being in the pit too, and that was a blast. it just seemed so daunting. Just the idea of trying out seemed daunting. But I forced myself and I got there. And I've used that a couple of times in college. I don't know if you know this. It took a while to adjust. The freshman year adjustment period was what it was. I also think there was a bit of a shock because it was such a different environment than, where I'd grown up and where I'd gone to school. And I didn't do particularly well that first year. And I don't think there's anything tremendously unusual about that. But I know myself and I know that I do best when I am elbow deep in doing other things that I love. So separate, my academics, I tend to do well when I have that balance in other areas of my life. And so after that first year, I channeled exactly that feeling of like, wow, that looks really cool. Could I ever possibly? And I tried out for a bunch of dance teams and I made 2 of them and I danced for like the rest of my college career on like stages all over, certainly the state, but beyond the state. And my grades shot up. It unlocked that motivation, that drive, that balance. I don't know what you want to call it, but I know what it is. And I've seen this pattern replay itself enough times where that balance is so important to me. I'm glad that I've been able to keep those passions alive. And yes, now I'm like limited to TikTok dances in my living room, but I just know that it's an important part of my ability to do well in my primary area of effort, whatever that may be at a given time.
Right. Well, because you're filling your emotional cup
Yeah.
while you are performing and achieving,
Yeah.
both those things are really important.
Yeah. It doesn't even matter if I'm particularly good, right? Like, I just need to fill the cup. And I just remember, I think it was with Anything Goes. I lost my voice like right before the show during Tech Week. It was ironic. So I think at some point it was either in that show or another show. I was supposed to sing something. Like I had a singing line, Marie Casimir and I. Yeah, I sounded like a toad the whole time. But it's fine. It's fine because in my head, I had checked the box. I had proven to myself that I could take part in something that seemed daunting and I had a blast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Oh, Marie Casimir. Wait, I want to look for this. Hold on, because I didn't put that in the introduction, but I should have. And I
I
know
don't remember. It was Too Darn Hot, which
that was Kiss Me
Kiss Me
Kate.
Kate. That's the one I forgot.
Oh, so you did both.
I did both and I sang in Kiss Me Kate, except, Toad version.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Kiss Me Kate. Ah, Marie Casimir.
But she and I did the duet in Too Darn Hot, I think. Yeah, it's funny. Part of me, I think, like blocked that out because it wasn't my best.
Oh yeah. But you get through it.
I got through it, and
Good.
it was fine.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like Murphy's Law. Of course, I'm going to lose my voice like during Tech Week.
Let me tell you, we're doing the Wiz this year. And so we're in that last month, this is it, the home stretch. And I was like, if any of you get sick, I'm gonna kill you.
Well, I just remember me trying to say something, you being like, shh, like just rest. But there was that in terms of like the feeling of accomplishment. There was that, and then forgive me because I don't remember the name of the award, but I remember all the emotions that went with it. What was the award where you would pick one person? It was like right before opening night. And
Oh, Gypsy Robe.
the Gypsy Robe, yes. And I got that. And it was such a surprise and and an honor. And I'm like, what? And like I went from being in the pit, stargazing at the stage to wearing the Gypsy Robe. And it was everything.
Yeah.
And like I could go on telling everybody about it now and it means nothing. They don't understand it. They're like, what are you talking about? What are you babbling about? But I don't need them to understand. Like
No. I love giving out the Gypsy Robe because it goes to like an ensemble member. It's not one of the leads. It's somebody who, maybe they don't have any lines and maybe they don't have any solos, but it's the person that is there all the time, is doing all the work. Maybe they're in the background all the time, but like those are like the fundamental people that I need to make the big picture run.
Yeah. I think that was for Anything Goes. And my parents to this day, and I will ask them to take a picture. They have one of the photos that we got taken from that show. It's like up in their bedroom. I will get you that.
I want that. That's going in here.
But like everybody who was around me felt how elated I was being part of that show.
That memory that I have it's vague and specific. Like you were standing literally,
Was I doing the box step? Because that's
probably. And you know what? It might have been Kiss Me Kate. Now that I'm thinking,
maybe. I definitely, there's a bit of a blur.
it was a dance sequence that, you know, it was like 5, 6, 7, 8 practice go.
Mhm.
And you were like right there in the front. And like I remember just like looking at you and going, yeah, this kid's, she's doing it. She's doing it. Yes. You know. How have you changed since you graduated from high school?
I wish this wasn't so hard for me
Mm.
to answer, because in some ways I don't know that I have. And I don't think that's a terrible thing, because there are parts of myself that I like. And I wish more people said that out loud, because now I feel cocky. But there are some things about me that have changed. I think I've matured in the sense that I finally, truly, genuinely do care less what people think about certain realms of my life. That does not come as easily or quickly as maybe it should. And that's not to say that there aren't people in my life whose opinions I truly value, but it's a very small, small group. And I am always open to perspective, but I've kind of identified certain aspects of my identity and my personal life that I've decided are not up for being influenced.
They're off limits.
They're off limits. And I've accepted that wholly. You know, there's a big difference between someone, you know, having an opinion on, you know, my outfit of the day versus how I choose to raise my children. That doesn't mean that I feel like I have it all figured out on the latter. I certainly don't. But that's where I look to a very, very core group of individuals for feedback or perspective when I need it. And it's very limited. I've learned how to establish those boundaries now.
Yes.
At time. And
Takes a while, doesn't it?
it does. And it's a work in progress. Yeah. It is definitely not done. You know, they shift and evolve over time a little bit too. But I think the adolescent version of myself thought that boundaries were a bad thing, that it meant I was closed off to ideas or people or perspectives. And I no longer view it that way. And I hope that I'm not living it that way, because I do have so much to learn, and I do tremendously value perspectives, particularly when they're different than my own. So it's again, it's about finding balance, but I do think having some boundaries is important for so many reasons.
Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries.
Yeah.
So
But
very
then other aspects haven't changed at all. Like I'm still a little crazy. You know, I'm
crazy.
still a little crazy. I still am very much true to my Cancer crab self. Very soft on the inside, whether I like it or not. Very sensitive, very emotional, love deeply, hate deeply sometimes. Hate's not the word I prefer to use, but I feel strongly about things. Yeah. But I'm very loyal, and I don't think that's changed at all. You know, sometimes to my detriment. So some things have changed more than others, but I think the aspects of my personality that I love the most, I think are constants that have been there.
Yeah. Do you find that soft in the middle, but like tough exterior plays into your career as an attorney?
Well, it sometimes, I don't want to say complicates it, but I have to be aware of the soft on the inside. And I think where it's helped me is I do believe it's made me empathetic. There's a part of me that really has always gravitated towards the law because I appreciate the spirit of the law. Like there's intent behind most laws, and most of the time, not all of the time, the intent makes sense to me, right? Figuring out what society views as a desirable goal and then drafting laws that enable society to get there is really hard. So I really try to, you know, focus on the intent of the law. And I try to, especially because I'm advising business clients and not other lawyers, I try to keep that in the back of my mind. And I've tried to educate my clients, and so that they don't just view the law as a bad thing that is going to hold them back or prevent them from making progress. I view myself as a partner to my clients. And I think that soft crab inside helps me bring a little bit of empathy, a little bit of, I understand why this might be frustrating to you.
Right.
And I want them to succeed. I'm not just advising them because it's my job. Like I'm in the job because I truly enjoy helping support my clients.
Well, so I was looking at your LinkedIn because I do that kind of like, little trolling research.
Mhm.
And that you're working for a visiting nurse service. And, in the medical field, nurses, they always have a very tough time, with labor relations kind of things.
Mhm.
I know that, and you represent the management
Mhm. Yeah.
layer of it. And so I was curious to see how you view or how you approach the management side to obviously to protect them because they're the structure, they're the overall structure that makes the business work, and to protect their, not their clients, but who they manage
Mhm.
as a whole.
There has to be trust.
Mhm.
And there has to be trust across the table. And this is true not just at VNS Health, but in any environment where you're going to have a productive relationship. Like we are ultimately on the same team, right? Our nurses are incredibly, they're the backbone of the business. And it's really, really important to come to the negotiating table with a not just an appreciation for what they do day to day, like what it actually entails. What are the day-to-day challenges that are keeping them back from being able to do not only what we want them to do, management, but from what they want to do. Because ultimately we want the same thing. But it's taking the time to learn, taking the time to understand the broader landscape for nurses, not just our nurses, but for nurses in the industry, in home care, for nurses in New York. And I mean, certainly the pandemic is, I think, the most obvious example of a consideration, but it has truly impacted the burden on our nurses, and we fully appreciate that. And I'm grateful that the rest of the management team shares that philosophy of, we're going into this with the utmost appreciation for the work that our nurses do, that whoever's on the other side of the table do. And we're here to find a way to better support you in doing that work while looking out for the well-being of the organization from all sorts of different perspectives, whether it be financial or operational, what have you. I think, again, balance is the word of the day, word of my life. Try to bring that to everything I do. And I think as a result, and I'm grateful for this too, I have a really great relationship with, those who represent the nurses at our table, and I value them. And we have great conversations about other things. I consider them colleagues in the truest sense.
People taking care of other people.
Yes, I would count on any one of them to take care of me.
Ah, make me so happy.
Likewise.
So, okay. What would your adult self tell your high school self now to help ease the way?
This one's hard too, because I think I mentioned this before, right? I wish somebody would have said the best is yet to come,
Mm.
but I can't guarantee that that's going to be true in everybody else's case, right? It's a wish, it's a hope. And for me, I think it was true. I'm a bit of a planner by nature. And so I've always been so busy worrying about the future that I sometimes don't give myself a chance to enjoy the present. And there was a lot of that for me in high school. I was very nervous about college, about leaving the place that I'd spent my whole life. Same house, same town, same friends. And I'm a creature of habit, big on home and family and comfort and familiarity, right? I'm a crab. My shell comes with me. Like I don't move out of my shell. Again, it's like I could say it and I say it to my own kids all the time, but I at the same time can appreciate how it might not land, but it would be the best is yet to come. Like whatever is keeping you awake at night right now matters, but it's not going to be keeping you awake at night 5 years from now.
Always, yeah.
And 5 years is a long time to be kept awake. I get it. But if you could just know that and keep that in the back of your mind. Like one day, whatever this is that is weighing on my heart right now is going to be lifted. I don't know how, I don't know exactly when, but if you could just trust that that's going to happen, take some comfort in that.
So what's something that you're grappling with now?
So now I'm entering that phase of life where I think what people would call the sandwich generation. I have aging parents, I have very young children, and I probably wrongly and unfairly, have always viewed my parents as invincible. And they're human. They're amazing humans, but they are human. And so, I'm grappling with my dad, who has like better blood work than I do, had a massive heart attack in May of last year. He is stable today, thank God. But, it's a kick in the gut, a real wake up call. And I'm once again grateful for the support of my family, my brother, my sister, and of course my mother. And my dad's like a trooper. But it is that realization that people that I've relied heavily on my entire life are not invincible, that our time together is always limited, which is really hard to grasp. And I know you know this, having lost your mom, and I struggle with that because, like I said, I'm so firmly rooted in all things home and family. And I'd like to think that if I do everything right and I make all of my efforts to secure happiness, that I will keep it. But that's just not true.
Mm.
Life, it doesn't work that way.
Mm.
So,
No, it's true. When you start to see your parents as the grandparent generation, the older generation, they start moving into their 70s, and you start to see that strength sort of chipping a little bit.
mhm,
And when my mom got sick, it was like a 4-year process up and down, and there were some very low lows, and then then she peaked, and then she was doing okay for a little bit, and then there was like a lot of crash and burns. And seeing her go through that and weather that storm, I think what you start to see is their strength of character, their gut strength, and their desire to live, and their desire to push through and do whatever they have to do to give themselves whatever time they can to love on their families, to experience their families, and enjoy their time, while they're still here. But yeah, for us, we're seeing that play out in real time. It really rocks our perception of ourselves
mhm.
within that relationship, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an adult that people trust to advise on all sorts of really important things. But with my parents, I'm a kid. And I embrace that. I embrace the vulnerability that I still have when I'm with them, and I feel safe. And so being thrust into the role of an adult that might need to help and calm and allay fears, like, that's now, I should be doing that anyway because I'm a mom of 3, but
And you do. Yeah.
different. I do. It's just different, and it's new for me. And again, I'm grateful to be able to say that it's new for me, because there are people out there that have, been dealing with shouldering all sorts of, familial weights for years, even as children. And I think for me, it's the reason I'm struggling now is because I've been lucky enough to not have to deal with any of that. And like I said, thankfully he's doing well. It's a wake up call. And I am at a point in my life that I sometimes can't believe I'm at, that I have a role. It's not one of those things that anybody prepares you for.
Because you have to define that role for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it looks different for each family,
And each person in each family too.
Yep.
That's the other interesting thing is, proximity and accessibility and,
and resources. I mean, my siblings are, I love them to pieces. They're much, much younger than me. They're at a completely different stage of their lives. My sister and I have a 12-year gap. My brother and I are, 7+ years apart. Given where we are, that's enough time for you to have made significant strides in your career or your personal life. And so I do consider myself differently situated. And I do take on, responsibility wherever I can to make sure that I'm not, that their momentum, whether it's getting a degree or chasing a job or whatever, like, they have that flexibility.
The next question is a 2-part question. Tell me one thing that you miss about your adolescent self, and then one thing that's gotten better since you became an adult.
I think I used to be more fearless. I did not have as many fears. I think I feared a few things and I feared them very much.
Mhm.
But I was really open to trying like every new thing, going every new place, eating every new food. And I was much more adventurous. I don't know if it's just a function of like knowing myself a little better and just kind of knowing, okay, well, I have preferences. And part of, that what I was talking about earlier is like, I don't really feel like I have anything to prove to myself or to anybody else in like trying this new food that like just doesn't excite me, right? Like I'm not going to do it for the sake of doing it. I'm going to do it if I think it's going to add some value. So I'm not as adventurous as I used to be. I don't try as many new things. I don't visit as many new places. Like I'm a bit jaded and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So I'm probably missing out on something, but
10 years from now, you'll start to think about that.
yeah, it might just be circumstance where it's like I just don't, like you said, everything right now feels like it's all in the small universe, and maybe that space will open up later. So
Okay.
that possibility is not foreclosed.
Mm.
One thing that's gotten better, I think I'm slightly better at emotional regulation. I'm still very sensitive. I still, love deeply and I hurt deeply, but I think that I've gotten better at regulating my responses. It's not perfect.
And you don't feel it any less.
No, I just actively working on allowing myself a little bit of time and giving myself some grace to have the reaction, not always externally. And then I put it over here and I try to move on. And sometimes it's easier than others. Like it's an active work in progress. And I do think I've gotten better. If anything came close to derailing me when I was younger, that's what it was. It was just that regulatory ability had not been cultivated.
And I think that as a parent, especially of young kids, and now as of a teenager, a young teenager, your whole existence is about teaching how to self-regulate. And so you have to
Yes.
do that parallel in tandem with them.
Yeah. And actually I've started, reading some books, listening to some podcasts, and a lot of it geared toward helping my daughter learn life skills like this. And byproduct of that has been that I've picked up a few tricks and tips along the way.
Yeah. If you could give a piece of sage advice to high school students now, what would that be?
Ugh, eat a vegetable. Just like every now and then. Like when I tell you that I mean, I worked at Wendy's for 8 years, including throughout throughout high school. And I love Wendy's to this day, but like I don't know how I made it this far in my life, given what I was eating. And when I got to college, they had these great dining halls with like salad bars. And I was like, what is this? It's like, how do you even know what goes with what? Like who would willingly go to a salad bar? And lo and behold, there were kids who liked salad. And it was just like,
Let me tell you, these kids, they have Doritos for breakfast, which
yeah, my kids only eat like beige stuff, like macaroni and cheese or chicken nuggets. Or
I'm like, why? Like, get a piece of broccoli in there for crying out loud. Yeah, their diets are horrifying. And when they're young, their palates are, you have to kind of gently add things in, they have to try it 15 times before,
I used to home make my own baby food because I was like so committed to like introducing things. Like, can't believe that that's what I put in. And this is, these are the dietary habits that we got out. But like now I actually eat impeccably. Now I feel it when I don't. Looking back, I'm like, man, I might have been a superhero if I if I like didn't spend the first 25 years of my life, eating spiced chicken sandwiches. But
well, now my daughter, she's in, an apartment, townhouse kind of situation. And, she's got to go grocery shopping for herself. She has a meal plan, but, she doesn't always use that. And, she buys tofu and she buys frozen vegetables and fresh fruit. And she's like, yo, I have to make sure I get a vegetable. Is avocado a vegetable? She's like, well, no, it's really a fruit. And I'm like,
that counts, girl. That counts. That's good.
green, that's good. Throw some broccoli in there.
I think I was 30 when I tried my first avocado. And that's only because it became trendy.
And you were like, what have I been missing?
That's also probably, when you're young, it's probably the only time in your life that you can get away with eating that. So I'm not saying don't enjoy and indulge, but I think I was the other extreme, and it's not for lack of my parents trying. I think there's more options now. Like I do think healthy food is trendier now, and social media has actually helped. Like I have all these great people that I follow, with really cool recipes. Like they help make it more accessible, expensive, so not accessible in that way. But it's cool to try and round out, your diet or have a focus. So hopefully the next generation is better equipped to not have to learn it all at the age of 30.
I also think with the social media, they almost glamorize it,
They do. Oh yeah, exactly.
I'm like, oh, they make it pretty and they keep it, those short bits and bytes. Like I've started from, Facebook or Instagram, wherever, like saving some of
Mhm.
those recipes that they do. I'm like, do they
Yeah.
put the ingredients there? Oh, I can copy and paste that. I can try and make, so if I'm doing that, well, the kids that are consuming that
Yep.
media, hopefully they're doing that too.
Yeah, this is like how they're going to learn to cook. In addition to taking whatever, they get from, more traditional methods, family recipes, whatever. And that combination is gonna be lit.
Yeah, because then they're gonna make stuff for us, I hope. That's, like, amazing. In fact, we have to go to the grocery store today, and she found this, like, Ghanaian soup recipe, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, when you're home, we're doing that." Like, "Great, perfect." Just not
Oh,
without
Jesus
the scotch
Lord.
bonnet peppers, no.
Oh God, that's incredible.
I know, I'm like, "Oh,
I used to just sleep through my breaks when I came home.
well, she's done that too, but that's okay. It's okay. She'll wake up at some point. I figured I'd do the interview, early, and then maybe by 1 o'clock she'll get out of bed. I'm like, come on, let's go to the grocery store. Let's make our soup.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. What are 3 self-care practices that you do now to help to center or regulate yourself?
This is hard. I don't think I do enough of this, but active efforts these days, especially. I read. I really like reading, and I've fallen off of the reading wagon at times because I have to find a book that I like, and I have to have the book with me when I want to read it, and then I have to have, two hands, one to hold the book and one to turn a page, and I don't always have those things.
Hey, mom.
Right, or like you're on a subway, or it's just easier to take out your phone, swipe with one thumb. But I've returned to reading, and I really like the time away from all the screens. I have a bunch of lists, and so I always have like 5 books on hold with the library, which I think is this amazing resource that I hope never goes away, and I wish more people would use. I have a beautiful one by me in Brooklyn Heights. I have like 5 on hold, and at any given time, I go through about a book a week.
I have a book that I started, Misty Copeland's new book about Raven Wilkinson, and I
Hmm.
got about halfway through it. It's sitting on my nightstand, and I always get, look, I'm gonna finish this book.
Yeah, exactly. And
Just
then it's like you feel guilty, or at least I do, for like not taking that time out to finish the book. You're like, the book is left undone. Feels like failed to complete something. And then
I have
just,
to go back and read it,
yeah,
like the last chapter again to get me into the next. Yeah.
then it just backfires. And you're like, wait, this is feeling less like self-care and more like I gave myself a task. But I try to read for pleasure. And I read stuff that, just makes me happy, whatever that happens to be. I'm big on prayer for me. Whatever version of it that helps you ground yourself daily or however, like for me, it's prayer. It goes back to, I'm still an American Muslim American. It's ebbed and flowed, but it's definitely continued to be a part of my identity, and I've leaned more into it, particularly as I've gotten older. I love a good massage, but like, does that really count? I mean, maybe.
It's a once in a while thing,
Yeah.
but yeah, they're good. I actually get to go once a week, once every other week, because it's covered on my health insurance. And if it's
Hmm.
covered,
Yeah.
I'm gonna use it. And especially because of what I do,
Oh, of course.
I'm like moving and active and doing all this crazy physical stuff. And I'm 51. Like,
Amazing.
and
The
so
best
many,
is yet to come.
oh, yeah, definitely. That's part of I got to take care of this body and this brain if I'm going to keep doing this. And when I'm 80 years old, I mean, come on,
Yep.
that's the
I can
goal.
totally see you doing some tumbles.
There's a woman, I think she's German, Austrian or German, and she's like 90 years old, and she still has this parallel bars routine that she does. And every once in a while, somebody comes up and sends it to me, and like, that's gonna be you. I'm like, with any luck, I'm in.
Mhm. I feel like this counts as self-care. Like I did something for me, and this feels like it was for me. It feels like it was cathartic. So I don't know if this counts, but it should.
100%. Let me tell you, this whole podcast thing, which honestly, so we're a year old. Well, by the time this comes out, it'll
Mhm.
much more than a year old. But this all came out of me wanting more to write because I've been writing a lot,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
being a
see.
writer, all that. And at this time last year, or in February of last year, I like kind of ran dry a little bit. And I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm gonna write about. I just did another gymnastics. I did another weight loss thing. Like, what am I gonna write about? I don't have a lot right this moment. And my husband like came up with the seed of the idea. And was like, why don't you like interview your old students? I was like, that's genius.
Well, I tell my kids that I'm still in touch with teachers that and not even just you, but like my first grade teacher who must be in her 90s. Like she and I are like Facebook friends. My second grade teacher, my fourth grade teacher, my sixth grade teacher, and then so many of you from junior. Like, and that's incredible.
It is. I think it's rare. I really
I
do.
do. I don't know anyone else. I don't know of anybody outside of, East Ramapo, frankly, like Spring Valley. Like, I truly think we had a special, and still, I think so many of you are still there, but there is something unique about the bonds that teachers there form with their students.
I agree. Because I think there is not just so much need, but I think that the environment, like teaching where we're teaching, I think it becomes that much more important to connect with our students.
Mhm.
We're dealing with like a lot of stuff
Yeah, yeah.
layered on top of it, that I feel like the reason that we are there is because of the people who are in our classroom.
Yeah.
We're not doing it for the paycheck. We're not, doing it because we're going to climb a business ladder, certainly.
Yeah. No, and
But
it comes across.
yeah, and I think that there's a mutual reciprocity to those relationships, because I truly love these relationships that keep coming in. Like they have informed who I am. And just like my Nausheen kind of keeps, there's a little place in the back of my brain, whenever I access that thought, I just go, oh, it's just in this
Yeah,
moment.
no, dopamine hit. I get it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So when I get to sit in front of somebody for 90 minutes and really flesh things out and see where they are and see what they're thinking and see what this relationship was and is now, it's like just oxytocin, just
Mhm.
flooding my brain. It's beautiful. Well, Nausheen Rokerya, my girl, thank you for coming in
Thank
and
you.
talking with me about all of this, all of it.
Yeah, covered a lot.
Yeah, we really did.
I feel lighter and younger somehow.
Oh yeah, me too. I just have that little, now I gotta like, I really need that picture.
I'm gonna find it.
Yeah, I have to have it because I always try and pull pictures, but I don't always have pictures accessible from those early days. Like I have a couple.
Yeah, this one I know because it's somewhat out of place with the rest of the family photos in my parents' bedroom.
Right.
But I know it's there and I'm gonna get someone to take a photo of it.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me here. And everybody, thanks for watching. And we'll see you next time on Change for the Better, the power of arts in education. Love you so much. You too.